You ever had a dream that was interrupted, but it was so amazing that your only thought was, I need to get to sleep really fast, like right now? That's kind of what happened to me. So uh, after I'd been bumped by the laundry cart, I I just dove back in, and I was trying to dive back into what I would mentally call the. I wanted to astral project to the snowflake, um, and it was like I knew I wasn't going to die, um, and I didn't feel like I could just will myself there directly. So on the metaphysical highway, there's a bunch of on ramps. It's not just a near death experience. Yeah, meditation, fasting, prayer, orgasm, herbs, pharmaceuticals. There's a myriad of on ramps. So I tried to astral project my way back there, and I didn't get there, but I got to the Four Corners area of the American Southwest, and I've never been there. Um, Closest I've been is to Phoenix, but so what I saw in my mind's eye was basically a 11-foot circumference. I guess that would be diameter. So 11-foot diameter circle dug into the desert floor. And if you were to stand in this hole, you would find that you probably have your fingers to your neck, or your eyes to your neck above the hole. But by and large, you were inside the hole. And then it wasn't just a cylinder. Um, it was like a cylinder, and then they dug it out like another foot in width so that you could actually have someplace to sit down inside there. And there was a fire in the middle, and the ceiling of the pit area was old, dried out timbers. I mean, they were white. They almost reminded me of bone. But they were white, and they were just hard like rock. But they were crisscrossed across the top of this roof, and there was very few little streams of light that was actually coming through. There was enough that you could still see down in there. By and large, it was shaded. So you were down inside the earth in this circle with a little fire pit in the middle. And I was sitting with my back against the earth, sitting on this ledge and looking at the fire. And directly across from me was a very wizened old American Indian. Bless his heart, he had a face like a leather bag. Just brown and scratched and scarred and wrinkles. But they were points of pride for him. And he sat there with that same kind of lopsided grin that I saw with George Carlin. Had the same kind of twinkle in his eye, kind of a cheeky monkey type of look. But again, such profound wisdom behind those eyes. And it was a much more conversational discussion. It was a very, I would say, a very 3D experience. I was very aware of my humanness again. I could feel the heated earth against my back. I could feel the sweat roll down the side of my face. The fire in the middle was curious. It wasn't there to keep you warm. It was more of a ceremonial type fire there. And every once in a while there was a leaf or a couple sticks or branches that were, thrown on there. But it was more like a professor and student having a conversation, and not. It was almost like soldiers who had maybe went through boot together and maybe were on a mission, but then went different directions, and then a couple years later they find themselves together again. And so there was that kind of camaraderie, a little bit of weariness, and at the same time, I've never had siblings, but I would say it'd be kind of like meeting your brother or running into a best friend you hadn't seen in a while. But it was how's that near-death experience for you, and how's life been for you so far, and so what have you learned so far, and from that perspective is very much like a professor and student. The professor knowing quite well what I'd already been through, having maybe witnessed it, but at the same time having been through it himself, and was just kind of like, I know what you've been through, but I want to hear you verbalize it. And I think I also want to give you the opportunity to verbalize that which maybe you don't share. And so, yeah, it was emotional content, whereas the previous place, not so much, in the sense of, the ankles stopped hurting, the knee reconstruction didn't bother. All of these things that, again, I had taken off while I was with George. Those things were present. So it's like I could feel the heat on my face. I could feel the sweat roll down the side of my face. I could smell the smoke. I could feel the earth, the little pebbles underneath my feet while I was sitting there. All of these things were present. But after the meet and greet, the discussions got more serious, and the concept of a spiritual paramedic was laid out in more detail. There was also some caveats thrown at me. So again, this was in 2005, and it was shared with me that you came back because part of your spiritual contract this time around was to be a spiritual paramedic. And that's going to look different ways. But you're in a time and place where it's going to be sorely needed, and that it's important for you to be there and participate in that transition. And it was even kind of held back from me. So I wonder how much I'm still supposed to hold back. I saw a lot of tribulations, and that's kind of a Judeo-Christian word, maybe that's too front-loaded, but there were a lot of challenges. And again, this was 2005, so if you can go back 15 years, 16 years, and say, what's changed in 16 years? Just a few things that come to the top of my mind was the Arab Spring, Donald Trump, the changing of weather patterns, the storm of the century happening every other year. But again, it was like all those things that we used to be able to count on. Religion, politics, banking, those pillars that supported our system, not even judging the system, just stating for a fact. The pillars that supported our system are crumbling, they're breaking down. And a lot of those people who have become inured with the system are now fearful. And that whole primary reptilian brain, fear and lack, is definitely shaping reality. And this is way off the near-death discussion, but I do believe that Rodin had it backwards. I am, therefore I think. Your consciousness comes before your physical reality. That's why there's reincarnation. That's why there's deja vu. So I know that it's easy to look at things now and say, oh yeah, 15 years ago I predicted all this. And honestly, I didn't. I just knew that I was going to come back and it was going to be a rough ride. I didn't have any specific details. I just knew it was a breakdown of society. And sometimes that's good. The disclosure that's going on with ATIP and those related things. I think that previous mentality of, my country, right or wrong, I think that existed for the boomers and the previous generation. But as that generation's fading away and we have this next generations and they're seeing the reality or the truth is starting to come loose, I don't think people have that sense of obligation to hold those secrets anymore. And so that's why we're seeing long-held secrets kind of falling apart. And that could be everything from the pillars that hold up the world to reality, to the American system, to Weinstein and Cosby. Some systems need to be broken down. So during that conversation, as we were talking about different systems breaking down, the fire changed colors. And it was like the fire changed colors with the subject matter. And again, this is 2005. So as I had these dreams later on in life, I was seeing more purple flames. And it wasn't until 2009 that I learned who Saint Germain was. And there's a whole other story I'll talk about how the first time I thought I met Archangel Michael was not the first time I met Archangel Michael. I was actually allowed to remember the asynchronous events. So I tried really hard to keep everything in chronological order, which doesn't happen in my brain. Trying really hard to keep things into a Western, not necessarily a Western, but a Homo sapiens perspective. Man, that sounds weird coming out of my mouth. But when you've considered the reality of clover and rocks and planets, we're not the only game in the forest. So the whole sum of my near-death experience was for me to, I think, re-engage with the plan that I had originally. At the time of my near-death experience, I was a technical trainer in the pharmaceutical industry, was flying all over the United States and Western Europe, teaching proprietary software to doctors and nurses, staying in places like the Ritz-Carlton. It was high stress, but high visibility, really good pay, and it was so far off of what I was supposed to be doing. And the family and the life I had built up to that point supported that reality. But as they say down here down south, had my come to Jesus moment. Got taken out to the woodshed or put in timeout. Maybe that's it. My near-death experience was me being put in timeout by whatever powers that be. But what happened was I remembered what my purpose was. And I wasn't following the purpose that was given to me by my parents or by my professors or by my sense of familial obligation or what society told me I was supposed to be. And it's like I had to nearly die in order to remember why I was living. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it also kind of kicked open the door of all the other weird things that were going on, because prior to my near-death experience, I was already talking with spirits who had crossed over. I was using the power of intention as well as my Reiki to clean haunted houses. I had already been attacked by ghosts, had an attempted possession during my escapades. There was also some past life things that I knew they weren't dreams, but I also didn't know what past lives are supposed to feel like. So all those things were happening prior to my near-death experience. What the near-death experience allowed me to do was kind of coalesce all those different silos and put them into one kind of compendium. Eventually, I'd like to talk about that compendium, and I think the best way to go about doing that is to start talking about the silos. And then once I have the silos out there, then I can start building a platform with them and kind of tie them all together. And that is just me talking 3D reality. There's also a component that involves projecting backwards in time, projecting forwards in time, and then also stepping outside of time and getting into trans-dimensional reality. But ghosts, I think, have been overplayed. I may talk about that if people ask me to, but I think that's been overplayed and a lot of people know about it, and I don't think I could say anything about ghosts that would be informational or instructional at this point. So we'll stick with near death. We'll move on to that to other subjects as I'm inspired, and we'll see where it goes from there. But you can follow more of my shenanigans at my website, which is johnmathis.me, and John Mathis, all one word. And from there, you'll see where I have links to my metaphysical book for young adults, which is The Alchemist Heir. Then I also have a metaphysical book for dudes, because I go to these metaphysical fairs and mind, body, spirit thingies, and I would see this typical demographic of, here's your 30 to 60-year-old female, college educated with disposable income, living in a desirable zip code. Thank you, Facebook, for teaching me all those things. But what I'd also see was a male in tow who did not want to be there. And so they've got their nose buried in their phone, or this goes as far back as, listening to their portable CD player in their fanny pack. And it takes two to kind of make things happen. And if you're just placating, I think that not so much disingenuous, but I think if you're just placating, you could be assisting the process to accelerate a lot faster if you participate as opposed to anticipate. If that makes any sense. So the goal for the next book, Guitar, Cigars, and Tiki Bars, A Guy's Guide to Spirituality, was basically to engage those guys. And so, there's a coffee stain on the front of my book and a cigar cutter, and I mean, it looks pretty sketch, but I also think it's also engaging. And there is a balance between trying to put something out there that doesn't give you a negative impression versus don't be so dedicated to perfection that it impedes progress. So I'm trying to find that balance of it's ready enough. And so I hope that these talks that I've done have been enough. And I guess we'll find out as soon as I release it into the wild. But thanks for listening. Thanks for participating in this reality. And if you would like to hear more of this shenanigans that I've been up to, please subscribe to the channel, pop onto the website, and if you want to drop me a note, a message, or want me to come talk at a thingy that you're doing, that's the place to do it. So thanks a lot. Have a great day.